confronting a hunger crisis in the wake of Israel's ongoing military operations targeting Hamas in Gaza. From Washington, this is NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Gabrielle Dawkins. President Trump's Big Beautiful Bill is over 2,000 pages in length. News 88.7's Tom Perumian clues us in on some of what's in it.
Rice University political scientist Bob Stein, who has read and digested the bill in its entirety, has some blunt talk on its fiscal responsibility.
It doesn't cut the deficit. It actually increases it. You can debate the point about how much it increases it, but we're talking about not billions, but trillions of dollars over the next decade. What that means is that around July, maybe even late August, the Congress is going to have to, and the president sign, a debt ceiling increase.
As for the bill preserving tax cuts, which many deride as benefiting the rich, Stein puts that to rest by saying across-the-board tax cuts always benefit the wealthy for one reason: they have more money. I'm Tom Perumian, News 88.7.
And Bob Stein appeared on Hello Houston Tuesday. Houston City Council will consider ramping up enforcement at problematic apartment complexes. Council member Letitia Plummer is pushing for the change, which would implement mandatory inspections at complexes with 10 or more habitability violations.
This is about shifting from a reactive stance to one of preventive care to our communities.
The proposal received favorable recommendation from a council committee Tuesday and will go on the main agenda next month. A Houston area FBI analyst was arrested in Northwest Harris County on charges of possessing child pornography. Brian Roush is now in custody following an investigation. He was charged after multiple videos of child sexual assault were found on his phone, according to authorities. He's booked in the Harris County Jail right now. And try your best to stay dry. Stormy weather is in the forecast for today. It's 74 degrees, and a flood advisory is in effect for Brazoria, Fort Bend, Galveston, and Harris County. I'm Gabrielle Dawkins, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance. Progressive is looking for dedicated and forward-thinking individuals to join their growing team. More information, including application, at progressive.com/careers.
Live from the University of Houston, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
And hello, Houston.
Hello, Houston.
We are back with you again today on a very dreary Wednesday. Frank Billingsley.
Why are we all in black? Because of the rain?
We are in black.
We are all wearing black.
If you're watching us on YouTube, you can see that, right?
Yeah, you can see us on the YouTube channel. But I think it's funny. I see the dreary weather, and for some reason, I blame Frank. Like, you control the weather from your laptop, not just report it.
I do.
Oh, you do? Well, then why are you doing this to us? How much longer is it going to last?
You're not an azalea bush, you know? If you were, you'd feel differently. Hey, there is a flood advisory.
Thank you for noticing.
There are flood advisories for like northern Galveston County all the way down to the Causeway, basically League City down to Galveston. Just they've had a couple of inches of rain, and that's all it takes to cause problems. In fact, 2 inches has been common. Sugarland, Friendswood, up around Conroe, the Woodlands, off toward Hockley and Prairie View. Elsewhere, 1 to 2 inches has been common. The good news is not a lot of severe weather with this, and it looks like it'll get out of here by 6, if not sooner. We have another round maybe tomorrow.
So much for the good news.
Well, I mean, if you look at the global models, they have more coming through. The micro models, like that I like, they're not that bullish on it. The good news is by the time we get to the weekend, we dry out.
Oh, good.
So if you have weekend plans, and don't we all, you're in good shape.
A dry out, are you talking humid, though?
Am I talking to what?
Humid on the weekend?
Of course.
It's Houston.
And July 1st, June 1st,
June 1st.
is Sunday, right?
That's right. This morning, my kids were chatting, and I was like, they were kind of having just a moment. The weather throws everybody off. And I said, guys, everybody relax. It is just a regular Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Except for the fact it's Wednesday for those of you keeping
Yeah.
score at
Hump Day
home.
Tuesday.
And Evelyn looked at me. She's like, Mom, it's Wednesday.
It's Wednesday, Mom.
I said, right. It's a regular Wednesday.
Wind down Wednesday.
Yes.
We were chatting a little bit about that before the show. It's like when your children hit that age where their personalities not just come out, but now they're expressing themselves and thinking and correcting you.
Correcting me.
You know, they get to that point. Philip is still, yay, Mommy.
Yes. Yeah.
It's
My,
coming.
Yeah,
my
it's
son
coming.
was in 5th grade, which is what, 10 years old,
Yep.
11 years old,
Yep.
and he had to have stuff for his hair. Had to just, I said, Morgan, that's a lot of goop in your hair.
Gel.
You know what he said? Dad, you have control issues.
Don't we all, Morgan?
Of
Don't we
control
all?
issues. I'm going to take control of this right now. We've got a full show today. In a little bit, we're going to be taking a closer look at the Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month here in Houston and that thriving community. And we'll talk and learn more about them and what's going on to celebrate this month, even though we're toward the end of the month. Celeste, though, is going to start us off with our first topic of the day.
Yep. The White House General Services Administration is expected to send a letter to federal agencies on Tuesday yesterday, asking them to identify any contracts with Harvard and whether they can be canceled or redirected elsewhere. This is coming from a senior administration official told ABC News. The move comes as President Donald Trump continues to attack on the school, as the university has not complied with the administration's demands over providing data on its international students. It comes after the president announced over the weekend that he is considering allocating $3 billion away from Harvard to other trade schools, the latest in his battle with the Ivy League university. We want to hear from you. What are your thoughts about the latest in the Trump versus Harvard feud? Give us a call or shoot us a text, 713-440-8870.
Well, to say other trade schools, Harvard is not a trade school.
Yeah.
The money, this kind of $3 billion money goes to cancer research, other medical research. Trade schools are great. They're great. And they teach trades, which we all need. And you can make a great living going to a trade school. But it's not the same thing.
Well,
Right.
but I think you're talking about like an equal swap. It's like, oh, we're not going to put it there. We're going to put it here. When we know it's to punish Harvard, to take their funding away.
Clearly.
It is
Yeah.
not because he suddenly woke up and thought trade schools needed more funding. Where are we going to get it?
Well,
Harvard has plenty.
And a third of Harvard students are from out of the United States. So it's a huge amount, and it's a huge undertaking. And giving all these records, the way that we have seen this administration go at it with not a scalpel, but a chainsaw. Everything, whether it's deportations, rounding people up, cutting budgets, getting rid of U.S. aid, whatever they're doing, it's just sort of instant. So you give them a third of your student records. Are they going to go through every single record and decide whatever they're trying to decide? Or are they just going to say, you're all gone?
Right. And looking at this from a non-political standpoint, you have to ask yourselves, why does the federal government want international data from a university?
Yeah, I mean, as part of the argument is the fact that they feel like it's not abiding by what the Trump administration wants from student bodies and the way that they express themselves on campus, and that they have had too many protests that don't fall in line with what the current administration. I'm trying to be so clean on this
Look,
line.
Boston is a protest city.
Right.
The vegetarians protest meat at steakhouses, and people who don't like a certain movie protest at the movie. If they don't, they
had a tea party that started it all.
Exactly, and they do it. I mean, if you've been to Boston, you know they're all protesting, but they're all sitting there on the tea reading F. Scott Fitzgerald. I mean, they're a very bright group of people up there.
Right.
And
there was a good
protests mean
point.
things to them.
A good point you brought up too is that when we look at this and we think, all right, cutting the funding in a sense of retribution or punishment, and because of these, but that funding does go to all this research and what happened. It's not just scholarships for students as they kind of play it out. that the fabric of this country is built on the research and the science and the learning and the study that happens in institutions like this.
Doesn't all go to the crew.
It makes me think about what Rice University professor Bob Stein was saying yesterday when we were examining the big, beautiful bill. And something that really struck me was when we're looking at programs like this, and we were specifically talking about Medicaid, but now we're looking at, funding $3 billion that goes to Harvard University. There are beneficiaries and people that benefit from it. Mm-hmm. And the beneficiaries here are the doctors, the researchers, the professors, the students that are putting their effort into bettering the Americans and taking research to the next level.
Look at this text.
What's that?
He's just jealous of the top university in America because his fraudulent university was forced to shut down. He isn't going after any university that he attended.
No.
Like Wharton Business School.
Well, the other interesting thing is there's a story that's floating around on the internet, which the Trump administration and family says is false, is that Barron Trump applied to Harvard and didn't get in. And so this is retribution.
I don't know Barron that well, but I bet if he applied,
happen.
He would get in. He seems like a very bright guy.
Huh?
Yeah.
From what I've seen. He's very mature.
All right. What do you think about what's going on in the Trump versus Harvard feud? Give us a call at 713-440-8870, 8870. Does that actually benefit our higher education in this country? Is it wise to take money from a university like Harvard and funnel it to other schools? Is there a logic behind how they're doing it or why they're doing it? Or is it just retribution? Let us know what you think. 713-440-8870. Texas Tribune is reporting a proposal to limit how much an accident victim can recover in lawsuits for Medicare or medical care won preliminary approval from the Texas House on Monday, but not without changes that leave open monetary awards beyond medical bills and preserving the court's ability to decide what evidence is relevant. Senate Bill 30 intends to curb what's called nuclear verdicts or judge rulings that would award victims more than $10 million, which proponents say make doing business in Texas is unpredictable. If this proposed bill becomes law, those who sue in personal injury or wrongful death cases can submit only the amount paid for medical services. What do you think? Are you in favor of regulating lawsuits in Texas? Give us a call, 713-440-8870. You can also text us at the same number, 713-440-8870. Folks, thoughts on this one?
Regulating lawsuits, just that in general is interesting to me.
Well, I've always bristled a little bit because Greg Abbott has received almost $10 million from his accident when the tree in 1984 fell on him and made him a paraplegic. And not to say he doesn't deserve it, but he's been sort of instrumental in these kind of laws that don't let anybody else have that opportunity. Mm-hmm. And I've often wondered why. And now he says, if I could walk, I would give every penny back. And I believe that. I believe him when he says that. And it's horrible that happened to him. But it just seems that you're a little two-faced when you took all the money that you could take under the current law, but then you are governor and work toward laws that don't allow other people the same opportunity.
That start to restrict the law.
Yeah. Now, I'm sure there are frivolous lawsuits and people, we
heard about the Whataburger one or the guy with the onions.
Well, right. Yeah. I'm going to sue for $1 million because you put onions on my Whataburger.
And last month he was suing Sonic.
Right. And maybe in 1984 it was much different where there was more respect for the law and people were given what they deserved with guidelines in place, and now it's a wild frontier, and you just get as much money as you can, and maybe that's why we need
What bothers me in here is the phrasing that a person who sues in personal injury or wrongful death cases can submit only the amount paid for medical services. In wrongful death or personal injury, it reaches far beyond just the cost of medical services, how it can change or in some ways ends your life. What is the value of that? Taking that away, if I'm reading this correctly, is like you can only get paid for your medical costs. That doesn't seem right.
Because pain and suffering matters a lot.
Yes.
And then PTSD and emotional trauma afterward. You could go through an accident that now you don't sleep.
And there's also a definition of
effects.
medical costs. So, for example, would your psychiatrist, your therapist, would that fall under medical cost if you had to seek out professional and mental health help?
Okay, so this is a very trivial story, but I remember driving my car, getting hit. My car got totaled, and they were only going to offer me so much money. It wasn't enough to get me back to where I was, which was driving this car that worked. It was giving me the value of the car, according to Blue Book, and it was an old car, but it worked. And I didn't have to put out any more money. I was driving along. It wasn't my fault. At the end of the day, I only got a handful of money, which was not enough to make me whole again. That's where I have a problem with these kind of laws. It's about more than just what the value is. It's what it means in your life. I should have been able to been back in a car of comparable value moving along on that road again with no impact on me because it wasn't my fault.
Saying that, I'm against all these nuclear verdicts that happen. $650 million for this or that.
The coffee spilled from McDonald's.
Yeah, even if you go to through a divorce, the judge will look at an actuarial table and say, well, you're 70 and you're 50, and so you're going to live 15 more years, and you're going to live 25 more years or 35 more years, and so this is how we're going to divide it up. So maybe there need to be guidelines saying, look, life is valuable, but in this situation, a finger is worth $1,000, an arm is worth $10,000, a head is worth $1 million.
What about the piano player?
Which finger?
You if you don't have guidelines, you have nuclear verdicts. Because
I think my pointer finger is worth more than my pinky.
That's right. Well, good lawyers and emotional juries can lead to problems. Okay, we're moving on.
We are Wednesday-ing.
713-440-8870. Are you in favor of regulating lawsuits in Texas? Let us know what you think.
Okay, starting today, guess what? Southwest. One of my favorite airlines. I only have two favorites, United and Southwest.
Your whole office is decorated.
I have Southwest, actual Southwest seats in my office. I got them at a
Are you going to be charging new fees to go into your office?
Yes, I have cocktails to serve. But they're going to start imposing a checked bag fee for new and updated bookings, introduce a basic fare type that doesn't allow changes or same-day standby or transfer flight credits. So the Wall Street Journal reports that one checked bag will be $35, a second will be $45. Flight credits issued today or later will expire in 6 months. It used to be that they would be forever, never expire. But now they're going to expire. So they're rolling back that, and they're going to switch to assigned seats next year. Reservations for those flights will start later this year. Okay. Well, I'm for all of this, except you know what? Here's what's going to happen. Kevin and I are going to see you and your family, and we are already going to have picked our seats. And we're all going to sit down close to each other, and Ernie's going to show up, and he's going to want to sit with us. And we're going to say to this person who has an assigned seat, will you mind switching with Ernie back there, because we'd like to sit. And this happens all the time.
They always are inviting me to sit with them.
No, this happens a lot of times where people ask other people to switch their seats to sit with family. Somehow they got separated. They saw friends in the airport that they want to sit with. Yeah. And you can kind of do that with Southwest now. You can kind of hold a seat and say, oh, we have a friend coming to sit with us. That's still gonna happen despite assigned seats, and it's going to cause problems.
I don't know. I think that I got to be honest with you. As somebody we both were just recently flying, and I flew United last time to McAllen, and this time I think we were at Southwest, and it was one of those things where we paid to be in the A group, so we could just be in the front, sit down. We were there. I don't think it's going to cause problems. I actually think it'll be better. I don't know.
I'm all for the reserved seats. I do not like that mad dash rush. Who's here? Get him there. Stand in line. I'm always standing in line before they've told me I can stand in line, and I don't like that.
You're
but
one
I
of
don't
those,
want to not
Ernie.
have my seat. Yes, I'm one of those. So I'm okay with that. I am kind of tired of this whole baggage fee thing. I mean,
the baggage fee.
We're traveling. You're flying us somewhere. Of course we're bringing luggage. Now, because I have a credit card that then ties in with an airline, I can have a bag or two. I don't even know what the rules are anymore. But I get that courtesy. But I think this is getting ridiculous. It's like, okay, in Europe, you fly cheap, but you pay for every step of the way of it. And you have to have a little tiny bag, and my suitcase with the wheels sticking out is within the measurement size so it can go in the overhead. Those things, It is what it is. I don't know. I think it's going to be fine. People want a discount. You can pay into what you want. But the baggage fee's enough already.
See, my problem is I always think I'm somehow getting pushed back. Like if I'm in group boarding B and I'm number 12 and I'm in the little area, I always think the people in front of me are clearly 14, 15, 16.
Right.
Well, because I'm there and I probably am.
Well, when we were coming back on Southwest the other day, we were at A35 and 36, right? Mm-hmm. And so we're making sure we're where we're supposed to be. And I said to one woman, "What are you?" And she said, "Oh, 11." And I said, "Well, you should be over there at 11." Turned out she was in C11.
Dun, 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 dun. So what do you think? Will these changes help or hurt Southwest? Give us a call, 713-440-8870.
And don't be a cheater.
Oh, quick, I do have to say today's National Hamburger Day.
Oh, I love it.
You know where I'm going for lunch.
Alex Garza put right here in our YouTube comments, Happy National Hamburger Day. One of my faves is Stanton City Bites.
Hold the pickles, hold the lettuce. Special orders don't upset us. Go ahead.
I have a special order for you. Celeste, wrap us up.
Coming up on Hello Houston, we'll talk with Director of Community Development for Asian Chamber of Commerce, Houston Paul Gore, about Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month and more. This is Hello Houston on News 88.7.
Your right to know what's really going on in our world depends on more than just great journalism. It depends on your participation.
Houston Public Media is funded by Houstonians for Houstonians. 80% of our budget comes directly from you, our community.
That's how trusted information stays free and accessible. No ads, no shareholders, just clear and careful reporting.
Protect your right to stay informed by visiting houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
Imagine two friends getting together.
So what's happening in Congress?
Well, this is something that is going to be tough to defend in an election year. And that's assuming it even passes, which it might not.
Imagine you could listen in.
And then what about the Senate? The bills are just rocketing out of the chamber.
Have they gone too far? The House might say, well, wait a minute.
Well, you can. Party Politics with Brandon Rottinghouse and Geronimo Cortina. Fridays at 7:30 p.m. on News 88.7, at 8 on TV8, and on your favorite podcast platforms.
Hi, I'm Craig Cohen, the host of Houston Matters. Join me weekday mornings at 9 or at your leisure on your podcast feed for your daily guide to the people, places, issues, and ideas that define Greater Houston. From politics to the economy, energy to the environment, healthcare to education to transportation and beyond. If it matters to Houston, it matters to us. Check us out wherever you get your podcasts or live on the air weekdays at 9 a.m. right here on News 88.7.
Houston Public Media brings to you PBS World, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on TV 8.6. Experience the personal connection behind the headlines with programming devoted to telling stories that humanize complex issues. PBS World helps us understand the movements, conflicts, and cultures that connect us all. PBS World on TV 8.6 and online at houstonpublicmedia.org.
And now back to Hello Houston. Call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org to get your comment in on today's topics. Now back to Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Harris County's Asian population grew 40% from 2010 to 2020. That's according to U.S. Census data. Also, according to the census, about 8% of the population in Harris County identifies as Asian. Houston is one of the most diverse cities in the country, and we wanted to celebrate that diversity right here on Hello Houston for Asian American and Pacific Islander Month. To discuss the cultural and economic impact the Asian community has right here in Houston, we welcome Paul Gore, the co-director of Asian Chamber of Commerce Houston. If you have any questions for Paul, you can call us now at 713-440-8870.
Paul,
Nice.
welcome to the program. You know,
Welcome.
Celeste just read the population grew by 40% from 2010 to 2020. But I guess also there was a growth in Asian-owned businesses.
Yes.
Went up in our area.
That is correct, and it's good to be here. live and talking about the Asian Heritage Month here, but even more so representing the Asian community here. So yes, it did grow. It grew
also by 40%.
Yeah, equally, and it's even more so. Our sales receipt growth is now $47 billion of impact here.
And just in Houston.
In Houston alone.
That's phenomenal.
So what? I know why I came to Houston. It was my job. What's the attraction to come to Houston for Asian people?
I believe affordability is one. The other aspect of it is opportunities. You see a lot of growth that is happening in Houston. If you look at the West Coast, East Coast, it's quite expensive to just live as a family. Yeah. And then you also have companies that have migrated their own employees into here. A lot of tech companies and energy companies that have relocated here and brought some of the Asian population as we speak. So it's a big growing community.
I've always read that Vietnamese is one of, if not the other language besides English, it's certainly one of the top.
It is. And let me just go down to the demographics of Asians.
Okay.
In the order population. You have South Asian as number one, then Vietnamese, then Chinese, Filipino, Pakistani, Korean, Japanese, Cambodian, Taiwanese, and Thai. Those are the top 10. You brought up Vietnamese. It's interesting because the Vietnamese community now has surpassed Los Angeles to be the second largest Vietnamese community in North America.
Really?
And the first one is San Jose.
I want to go back to a percentage that we were talking about, that 40% of the growth in population, but also the growth in business. And I'm curious if I'm making this correlation correctly or if it's just because the numbers sound like they should go together. It implies that I would think a lot of Asian Americans are self-owned business folk, that they do come in with that mindset to own business, to be their own kind of, their own boss in some way.
Yeah, and let me bring back to the history of our chamber. We were founded 35 years ago. This is our 35th anniversary in 1990, when the founding, members created the chamber with the initiatives of helping small business. A lot of them were grocery store owners as well as restaurant owners, and it really evolved not only just those type of demographics, but anyone who wants to do business. It's interesting that I have the data of this growth because if you look at the Houston population back then in the 1980s is 1.8%. It has grown now to 7% in 2010. And now if I looked at combined, those who at least put Asians in the U.S. Census data, it's 9.5. And our Houston population is 7.5 million. Wow. So that's about 700,000 Asians that are residing here. With that correlation of growth, the U.S. Census data, according to Pew Research, says 1 out of every 6 Asian adults are doing business in the nation. And so that's related here in Houston as well in that growth, and they look for opportunities. 67% of those who came who are residing here is actually foreign-born, meaning they've chosen to migrate.
Did you say?
67%, 67.57% of all those who are residing here has migrated from Asia and relocated here as a land of opportunities. And with that, they wanted to either start business or somehow be employed.
What's the biggest challenge that someone from an Asian country, what's their biggest challenge when they get to America and specifically to Houston?
Well, culture shock.
Yeah.
Cultural is a big, I guess you could say, challenge when they came here. Learning something different, something new of how to do business, how to interact with people, all the way to, I guess you could say, learning the ropes of transactional stuff.
Do most Asian people come here with a pretty good handle of English? I don't know what's taught there in their schools, but do they come here and then learn English, or do they already have some grasp of it?
Depending on the social status they have from their home countries. And I say that because you have different types of people who have migrated here. Those who have wealth and decided that they want to come here as an opportunity. So they bring their wealth into the U.S. as well as their family. So they learn pretty much English and how to do business in that perspective. But you also have a lot of refugees who have came in certain whatever circumstances they have, and they had to just learn the ropes and try to just learn how to do things to survive. Either they know how to do business or transactional things, or doing loose odd end jobs to just be able to be here in the U.S.
Since we're celebrating AAPI month, and I'm sure this is a common concern, question that would go to any immigrant community, but coming in, the challenge and the support they get in becoming, merging into American culture, but also holding on to traditions and values that come from their homelands. How does the Chamber, in some ways, and the celebration like this month help to foster that?
Good question. I think a lot of the cultural standpoints of Asian is through food. And a lot of interesting data that I can share with you is about 42% of all food and accommodations here in the greater Houston area is Asian owned. So the whole aspect of celebrations of food is really detrimental to their hearts of the Asian culture. So when you celebrate that, we normally have family gatherings that come in and just share the different types of cuisines that are resonates back to their homeland, which also invites those who are from different cultures to come in and immerse and be able to understand that. And in histories, we've had our Asian Restaurant Month. This year, we put a pause on that and focus on Asian Restaurant Series and helping our Asian restaurants own and be able to help survive in the challenges that they have today.
Well, just like in America, you are going to get very different food up in Maine or Minnesota or Florida or Texas or California. It's unfair to say Asian food, because there's so many different kinds of foods and specialties that come out of Thailand or Japan or China. So you have this month of Asian celebration, but how do you break it down?
As far as like cultural diversity?
Do you have one big festival, or do you have different nights for different countries? How does it work?
Well, during the Asian Heritage Month, it's basically the history is from our president that have deemed this particular month the cultural celebration. In that it's the recognitions of the Asian population here. But a lot of the cultural celebration actually happens in Lunar New Year. And the aspect of the new year that we follow the lunar calendar. And some of those celebrations come from like a lion dance that they have, firecrackers that they do. But also when they have food, they have mooncakes with the lunar festivals, that same. So throughout the year, we do have celebrations.
True.
It happens that May happens to be the United States recognitions of our heritage culture that we do celebrate. And we also have, I believe there's an Asian food tour, Asiatown tour that goes around too as well, inviting those who are looking to immerse in our rich community that we have here.
You're listening to Hello Houston, and we're speaking with Paul Gore, the co-director of the Asian Chamber of Commerce. You can give us a call at 713-440-8870 to join the conversation. Now, Paul, I have a quick question. Now we go back to looking at it from a business perspective. What types of challenges do Asian small business owners face? And do you think they're different from other small business owners?
It's very similar to a lot of the small business owners here. A lot of them is capital, finding capital, basically money, lending, interest rate that has come around here. Previously, during the pandemic, it was more of a stereotypical thing of I guess the Asians that are bringing the pandemic here, but it has really subsided. And now I believe it's just focusing on opportunities for the different things that everyone else is coming in Houston.
And you mentioned something about the pandemic. During COVID times, we did see a major uptick in hate crimes towards the Asian community. Do you feel like that has subsided? Where are we at in regards to that?
Actually, it was great that Houston did not see too many of those hate crimes. We were very fortunate. A lot of East Coast, West Coast had that because a lot of them took public transportation. So there's a lot of interactions where Houston is a lot of transits through cars and vehicles. We didn't see that much here. The only thing is safety is a concern too as well. You see a lot of the Asians, I guess in Asiatown has been a target of petty crimes and some of the violent crime too as well. But it's related to the pandemic of of hate crime specifically for the Asian. It's great that we didn't see too much of that in Houston.
And, obviously we've talked about Houston is extremely diverse. It's one of the largest cities in the nation. Why is it so important for Asians to have representation when it comes to owning businesses and being part of a thriving economy?
Good question. And when we looked at the U.S. Census data, there are about 24,000 Asian-owned employer-based business here in Houston. And if you look at the number of percentage, that equals about 20.56%, meaning that one out of every five business here that's operating is Asian-owned. So that's a big economic impact to the greater Houston area. And we're here as good as citizens to make sure we're employing those who are here, wanting to have an opportunity for our family, and the whole aspect of investments. And that's why the Asian Chamber is not only just Asian-owned business, but those who want to do business with the Asian community, because they know it's an opportunity, as well as those coming from overseas and using Houston as their launch pad to be part of this great city and great country. So we represent that community at large, and we're really pro-business in that standpoint.
Let me ask you a more cultural question. As the population grows and you assimilate into the larger community, and this happens with a lot of what we term minority communities, you start to become part of the general fabric and could lose some of what the traditions you carry with you forward. You can see that in certain bars that used to accommodate just certain groups of people. Now they're in all different bars and stuff. Is that something that you're consciously aware of in becoming an assimilation but also preserving culture?
Yes. And I say that because, you look at food. Food is one thing. You have the really traditional food, and then you have the fusion that has assimilated and just making sure there's a taste palette for everyone. But also, you have the first generation of Asian. Now you have the second, third, fourth, and fifth. You see that definitely in California, and here you're seeing that here. Even for my family, I'm second generation here. My parents were first immigrants, but I've sad to say that I don't know my language and heritage, even though I've been here in this whole aspect of the greater Houston area. So you're seeing that where you have opportunities that they're not necessarily losing their heritage, but they have integrated into the community, and it takes an extra effort to just know about their rich heritage, and even taking language classes.
It's so hard. It is so hard. As somebody who was raised in a bilingual home, Spanish and English, with my kids, I have so many friends that we would love to teach our children the language, but it's tough. It is really tough.
Well, having a month like AAPI month gives you an opportunity to highlight a lot of the culture and things. What's going on is still in the community. I know we're a little late in the month, but there are still activities going on. People can learn more.
Yeah. Our partners at the Asia Society has been doing a lot of great things in this community. I believe they have a sake tasting coming up, too, as well. So that's something you can...
Did you bring some today?
Unfortunately not.
Boy, that perked up my two co-hosts when they heard sake was on the table.
Yes, and so that's something that we've seen throughout the month. We had our luncheon, AAPI luncheon earlier. We had a guest speaker, Hudson Yang from Fresh Off the Boat, came in to talk about his own journey, and now he has a culinary show with Natural Geographic. So it's related to food, but it's also seeing how he represents the Asian community on screen. I think because of the month of May, it's ending. Those are the things that have happened in this whole month of May.
Well, I guess, and AAPI Restaurant Weeks goes through June 15th, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And you have the Happy Fest is happening through June 15th, starts day after tomorrow. Yep. So there are still programs out there.
Yes, they are programs there. And I'm glad you brought that up. There's a big film fest going from OCA, our partners there. As well, they're doing their whole restaurant weeks.
Is there a website people can go to find out more?
They're going to have to go through their website, not our website. We don't have necessarily repository of one particular website, but they're just different organizations that are putting out, I believe, Asia Society, if you just Google them, as well as OCA Houston.
Yeah. What about asianchamber.hou.org?
Yes, we finished pretty much our AAPI month. What we have upcoming is our luncheon to celebrate scholarships. We have given out 10 scholarships, collectively $20,000 for high school seniors. Over the past 20 years, we actually have been doing that, investing in the next generations of leaders.
Well, what a pleasure to learn so much from you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Paul Gore is the co-director of Asian Chamber of Commerce Houston. Again, thanks for joining us on Hello Houston.
It's my pleasure to be here.
After the break, we'll be talking to an organizer of a new art festival here in Houston. Stay with us as we continue on Hello Houston.
If a vaccine falls off the CDC's recommended immunization schedule, insurance companies are highly unlikely to cover it unless they make the decision that somebody getting sick from COVID will cost them more money.
I'm Michael Barbaro. That's Today on the Daily from the New York Times.
You can hear The Daily. That is coming up tonight at 7 o'clock.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Holocaust Museum Houston, featuring Ilan Ramon, A Life and Legacy, the story of the first Israeli astronaut. Exhibit opening and reception on May 29th. Details at hmh.org.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from St. Arnold Brewing Company, a place for corporate events on tap. Meeting rooms, AV equipment, and full catering available. More at starnold.com.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from UpReach Learning, offering summer academic boot camps designed to improve students' learning skills over the summer. Programs available for K through 12th grade. Registration info at upreachlearning.org. Support for Houston Public Media comes from Medical Bridges, where 95% of all support goes directly to humanitarian efforts. Since 1997, they've helped strengthen healthcare around the globe. More at medicalbridges.org.
Support comes from Rice University's Baker Institute, where you can hear world leaders from presidents to prime ministers right here in Houston, with access to conversations on issues affecting the world. More at bakerinstitute.org/membership.
Support comes from John Moore, helping with plumbing, electrical, and air conditioning repairs, including out-of-warranty units since 1965. Details at 730-2525 or at johnmooreservices.com.
From Houston Public Media and News 88.7, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest... And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now back to Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Last week, the nationally recognized contemporary art fair Untitled Art announced the 84 exhibitors participating in their inaugural Houston edition, which will run from September 19th through September 21st. These participants include a blend of Texas talent as well as exhibitors from the fair's extensive network of galleries across the globe. Joining us now to tell us more is Michael Slenske. He is the director of Untitled Art Houston. Michael, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
I think you need to get a little bit closer to the mic.
Okay.
There you go.
There we go.
So tell me a little bit. I am unfamiliar with Untitled Art.
So Untitled Art started in Miami Beach. It's on the sand. Jeffrey Lawson, who's a collector and entrepreneur and an old friend of mine, he had this idea to start a art fair on the beach in a tent. And it's grown to be one of the top fairs in the world, and definitely during the Art Week in Miami. And we'd been talking over the years about doing a project together, and I'd been coming to Houston for 15 years, and was going to work on a big public art project out here that was started February. The work on it started in February 2020, so that just never came to pass. But kind of the bones of that, or what I was working on, led me to kind of go, could there be some other project, of scale in the city work on. I'm a writer and curator in L.A., and I went to Jeff and I said, would you ever think about a version of the fair in Houston, kind of a different version? Because in Miami, it's 176 galleries. It's massive.
Is it kind of like Art Basel? Is it part of that?
It's at that scale. It's one of the top 3 fairs for sure.
You talk galleries and not artists.
Gallery. Well, yeah, and the artists show with the galleries.
Okay, but are you looking at specific artists, or is it more about galleries that represent artists?
It's both. We work with the galleries first, and they bring the artists. Okay. But so if that's that's 176 galleries, this is 84. It's a much more manageable. Like for this city at this point. Miami has a huge infrastructure.
Which, Michael, you said that you were like, why not Houston? And I think that one of my questions is, why Houston and not like a Dallas or an Austin? What was it about Houston specifically?
Well, I think that, for me anyways, I mean, Dallas has an art fair. And Austin has a younger fair that's, I think it was 10 galleries that just happened a few weeks ago. But Houston...
10
galleries. Keep Austin
small,
weird.
Yeah.
Small.
Small.
But, Houston, Houston's sort of the epicenter of the arts and cultural scene in Texas for sure, just in terms of you have the MFA, you have the Menil, you have CAM, you have the Moody Center, Rothko Chapel, Lawndale, the University of Houston. There's so many, and there's the amount of top curators and artists working in this city is it's unparalleled. So
having all of that, what do you bring with this that helps us with more understanding of current art scene or of the art, or what are you bringing that's an additional piece?
I think an art fair is sort of, if it's working properly, is a lens on a city. Mm-hmm. And so what we're trying to do is sort of, where you bring an international art fair in, but then you radiate sort of local, regional, national, international out, and Houston is this, huge international city, there's 145 languages spoken here. Mm-hmm. And so we have, galleries from all over the world that kind of reflect that diversity. But also, there's 17 or 18 Texas exhibitors. And the University of Houston School of Art and Public Art is going to have a booth for their MFA students. So I think it's, it's a little bit of everything, but you want people to kind of come into the fair and go out into the city. Our program will sort of be, come to the fair, and then there's going to be a Robert Rauschenberg show at the Menil. Come to the fair and go do a studio visit with one of, Rick Lowe or some artist that we're working with.
Did you curate this? Are you the?
I'm the director. So the curator is you're curating exhibitions really. We kind of, the Miami Fair is more curated thematically. Mm-hmm. This is more we're kind of controlling the flow. We're controlling the flow of how the art fair is experienced with Michael Shu's Office of Architecture out of Austin. They created a really dynamic floor plan, so kind of everyone gets seen in a really interesting way, because some art fairs you can get lost in. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you want people to kind of go in and out, because you want them to experience the students' work here. You want them to experience all the great restaurants, because you want it to be about this city and why there's so much, dynamism here.
To that point, we want to invite people to ask questions, 713-440-8870. So how, first, is 3 days enough? And it seems like it's going to go pretty quick.
Well, so it's those 3 days. There's a preview too, and you can buy, this is for the first time we're selling VIP tickets, so you can buy a ticket to the preview. Usually that's more for industry professionals and media. But there will be tickets for sale for the preview on the 18th. So it's actually 4 days. There's 3 public days. But I don't know. If you've ever been to an art fair, the fairs tend to last a little longer in other cities, and that maybe that's too much for Houston right now.
I don't know. Well, okay. Yeah. So what are the nuts and bolts? This is at the GRB.
It's at the GRB.
Yeah,
so you go in.
Ho. You in Florida, you're out on the beach. Here, when the Georgia, I'm thinking, where are you going to put this?
Yeah. So we're going to go in. If I'm coming, where do I go? What am I going to do? And
So you come in. We're in Hall A3. You go up the stairs. It's a really nice hall because there's natural lighting onto Discovery Green. So you kind of have this indoor-outdoor feel. We'll have some, really pretty amazing. I can't talk about it just yet because it's not.
You
totally,
could hint.
Yeah. Well, this special project that we're doing with an artist who has a long Texas history. And there's a lot of special projects.
You can announce it right now. That's okay.
But there'll be a lot of special projects. There'll be, things we're doing with local Houston artists in like a market sensibility. We're kind of, like almost like a cash and carry type thing that's not, paintings or sculpture that, will stay there for the remainder of the show.
So if I see something on the wall, I can buy it.
Well, yeah, you can buy, everything's for sale.
Okay.
Yeah, of course.
Everything's got a price.
Everything's got a price.
Yeah, we're inviting you in specifically.
I want to go back to the curating question
Yeah.
because in putting the whole show together,
Yeah.
what are you trying to teach us here in Houston? What are you trying to show us and expose us to?
Well, I think it's not really to teach any. I mean, there's you're going to learn about different gallery programs, different artists from there's artists from the Bahamas, there's artists from Australia and Africa and like.
But do you see themes in what's happening in their work today, or where the community's interest is lying and what's being produced?
You mean the community's interest in Houston? Well,
Yeah.
I mean that's the thing that look, it's diverse, know. So you can go to. We have a group in town this week, a press trip that we're kind of touring around, and we're just at the Asia Society, and there's a woman, the artist. She's 91, and she lives a couple blocks from the museum, and was teaching Tai Chi, like in her later years, and then has this great retrospective show. And then on the other end, you have like Tamara de Lampica's paintings, she had a great Houston history up at the MFA. And then Tamashi Jackson is going to show this, she's a great black artist, shows at the gallery I work with a little bit in LA. She's, going to have a show at the CAM opening this week. So it's wide.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's more just to kind of expose these galleries to Texas, and I think they want to be here. We talked about 84 galleries. I mean, there was a lot more that applied, that wanted to be in the fair.
So don't forget Galveston. Galveston has some great artists.
But I guess that goes back to my question. It's like more wanted to be in. These 84 were chosen for a reason.
Yeah. Well, this is an invitational fair. And so there's kind of, we don't, we invite people to have a draft proposal. And if it's really great, you'll get in. But this was an invitational version of the fair. And so we want, it's going to be a different mix than you might see in Miami, But then we have what we call the nest sector that's sort of supported by the fair. Younger galleries doing kind of we're subsidizing a bit of the cost, but it's really interesting programming. There's a F Gallery that's in Houston, Laura the Gallery. Who else? It's Seven Sisters. There's 1226 in Dallas and Martha's in Austin. Just like young, cool galleries that are like going to be like, the next blue chip spaces.
So you mentioned the Tamara de la Pinca at the MFAH. I actually saw it, and it's beautiful. I recommend everybody go. And the MFAH just actually extended it, so it'll be here till July 6th.
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
Just that I would.
I wonder if Discovery Green is going to piggyback off of this and put any art installations there.
Well, we're talking to them about some stuff. I mean, we can't program. It's year one, so we're not going to be able to program every single part. I mean, to a degree, that's what an art fair does. You're kind of like turning on pieces of the city, like the cultural infrastructure is getting tuned in.
Like the Super Bowl.
Yeah, in a way, and it's kind of a Super Bowl for art.
Right.
And what we hope to do is that, by like year 2, 3, 4, we have all these places that we have cultural partnerships with Discovery Green and all these other entities around most of the museums and, like the Buffalo Bayou Partnership. And it's sort of, can we get all of those programmed year one? Maybe not, but, the intention is to kind of, this is a long relationship.
Yeah, this is year one. You see this going on for as long as it can go on.
Yeah, I mean, there's no. I mean, I think there's, in a certain way, I've said this before. There's kind of no limit to what we can do here because there's a willingness.
That's why it's Untitled.
Yeah.
It's not like the 2020.
We'll title it later.
2025 art show. It's
And you're in George R.
Untitled.
Brown. You can grow and grow and grow in there. It's endless almost.
Well, they're in a growth period. They're going to have a new renovation.
Yeah,
So that's
a big
sort of
one.
part of it, that we could see growth, within that space.
Yeah.
Michael Slenske is the director of Untitled Art Houston. Michael, thank you so much for joining us today on Hello Houston.
Thank you.
Untitled Art's inaugural Houston edition will take place from September 19th through the September 21st this year at the George R. Brown Convention Center. Also, coming up on Hello Houston, we'll discuss gender and sexuality with Dr. Emma Smith, and we'll learn more about Houston's only winemaking vineyard, Nice Winery. Stay with us for this second hour of Hello Houston.
Stay tuned. There's more Hello Houston on the way with Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at HoustonPublicMedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Support Houston Public Media by donating a vehicle you no longer need. We'll take it in any condition. It's free to you, easy to do, and it could mean hundreds of dollars in support. Visit HoustonPublicMedia.org/cars to learn more. Thanks.
We have a chance of thunder showers getting up today to about 86. It's 71. This is your NPR station, KUHF Houston. News 88.7, a service of the University of Houston. It's 12 o'clock.
Just ahead on this hour of Hello Houston, we continue diving into today's top stories, including the Texas Senate approving a bill that strictly defines man and woman based on reproductive organs. I'm Frank Billingsley.
And I'm Celeste Diaz-Sherman. We'll also talk with professional counselor and therapist Dr. Emma Smith, who joins us to break down House Bill 229 and answer listeners' questions.
And I'm Ernie Manous. Plus, we'll learn more about Nice Winery, Houston's first and only commercial winemaking vineyard.
And we want to hear from you, so give us a call at 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. You can also watch us on our YouTube channel. Just go to houstonpublicmedia.org and click the big orange banner.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. President Trump in the Oval Office moments ago accuses Democrats of playing a political game and roundly opposing a massive legislation of tax and domestic spending cuts.
We don't have one Democrat vote. And if I were a Democrat, I'd be voting for this bill and I'd get elected to any position I want as a Democrat. They're crazy. They're voting for a 65% tax increase. And they're only doing it for hatred. They're not doing it for any reason.
Well, critics dispute Trump's claim of a 65% tax increase. Some Republican fiscal hawks have raised concerns as well about the trillions Trump's tax policies are projected to add to the deficit. Meanwhile, a federal judge has ruled that a lawsuit alleging Elon Musk and the Department of Government Efficiency are illegally wielding power over federal government operations can move forward. NPR's Stephen Fowler has details.
Several Democratic state attorneys general say Elon Musk has been illegally given similar power to cabinet officials without being confirmed by the Senate. Judge Tanya Chutkan found the plaintiffs provided enough initial evidence to allow those claims to continue. The ruling highlights the often conflicting descriptions of the power Musk and the Doge entity have been given to implement President Trump's agenda, and how efforts to downplay that power in court have been undermined by public statements and actions. Stephen Fowler, NPR News, Atlanta.
The Israeli military has killed a senior Hamas leader and military commander in Gaza. That, according to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Netanyahu made the announcement while speaking to Parliament today. NPR's Hadil Al-Shalchi has more from Tel Aviv.
Mohammed Sinwar became the de facto leader of Hamas in Gaza last year after the Israeli military killed his brother Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas at the time. Earlier this month, the Israeli military carried out a series of airstrikes around a hospital in Khan Yunis in the south of Gaza. Israeli media quoted defense officials saying that Mohammed Sinwar was the target, but the military is yet to confirm. The Israeli military only said that there was a Hamas command and control center in the hospital. Hamas did not immediately confirm if the strike had killed Mohammed Sinwar, who has survived multiple assassination attempts over the past decades. Hadil Al-Shalchi, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
The Trump administration is tightening vetting of international students. An official who spoke on condition of anonymity says the State Department's freezing new visa interviews for international students until it sets up a new process for screening applicants' social media activity. U.S. stocks are trading lower this hour. The Dow Jones Industrial Average now down 81 points at 42,261. From Washington, this is NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Gabrielle Dawkins. Houston ISD's budget season is in full swing as News 88.7's Colleen de Guzman reports Superintendent Mike Miles' proposed budget gives schools under his reform system more than $3,000 more per student.
Campuses under Miles' new education system, his instructional reform model for low-performing schools, will receive more than $10,000 per student, according to his proposed budget. That's around $3,000 more than what normal campuses will receive for students. Miles says that's because NES schools need more resources, like learning coaches. To balance the budget, he says administrative costs are going to be taking the hit.
Most of the purchase services we're decreasing that you find in the expenditures, that's from central office or the various departments.
The board has until the end of June to vote on the budget. I'm Colleen de Guzman, News 88.7.
In an effort to boost community engagement, Houston City Council is considering holding one meeting per month in the evening. It currently hears from public speakers at 2 p.m. every Tuesday. Council member Mario Castillo wants to shift that to 6 p.m. at least once a month.
We're better public servants when we hear from the community about their issues and their concerns and their thoughts on what we're doing here at City Hall. And so this gives the opportunity for people to address their elected officials at a more convenient time. 2 p.m. on a Tuesday is just not going to work for a lot of folks. Offering one evening public session a month helps us hear from more Houstonians.
Mayor John Whitmire's staff expressed support for the proposal, which is still undergoing revisions. The Houston Police Department will no longer require patrol officers to make at least one traffic stop per shift. Chief No Diaz dropped the quota after criticism from activists and some city council members. It's 72 degrees. Showers and thunderstorms are likely. I'm Gabrielle Dawkins, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. As a fiduciary, Fisher Investments is obligated to act in their client's best interest. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss. This is NPR.
Live from Houston Public Media and News 88.7, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
I always enjoy the second hour of the show.
Why?
Because it's like the lunch hour, and I feel like a new group of people joins us here. And so let us know. You know, if you're watching us on YouTube, there's the chat area there. There's always a conversation going on in that. You can find us just by going on YouTube and looking for Houston Public Media's channel, or just go to our website, Hello Houston, and click the the big orange bar.
Yeah, it'll take you to Watch Live. Hit Watch Live. We'll be live.
It's easy to do, or you can just continue to listen here. If you want to talk to us, give us a call, 713-440-8870. Celeste, we were talking earlier in the first hour about the Trump versus Harvard story, and we got some responses to that.
We did.
Did you want to share some of them with us?
Yeah.
Yeah, Richard from Baytown. Trump said he would be a dictator on day one, and that's what he's doing.
Except, Richard,
I
day
don't
one's
think he
over.
said- well, I'm not sure. Did he say that? Did he say he would be a dictator?
Yes,
know if
but
he
it
said
wasn't
that.
as a
Maybe.
definitive statement. He said people were saying he was going to be a dictator, and he said, well, I will be a dictator on day one, meaning he was going to come in and do all the things he wanted to do on day one.
Well, regardless of
Not
whether he
run
said
a
it, that's what he's
dictatorship.
doing.
Yeah.
I don't know. We got to be careful with that stuff because I think that it's one of those things where, we're talking about, did he say it enough? But really, we have to look at what he's doing. And now
what he's
not a
doing is
dictator.
pretty autocratic. And Elliot from Riverside says Trump is an autocrat, and an autocrat doesn't like criticism. So anyone that criticizes him, he will attack and seek to destroy. That's the basic motivation behind his actions. That's regarding the Harvard situation.
Yeah. If you have
that was all
thoughts
about
on
Harvard
that story and want to jump in and share with us, give us a call, 713-440-8870. Do you think that these moves against Harvard is a good move, a bad move? What's motivating it? What do you think? Share that with us. But we are
Weather.
now moving on to weather.
I'm telling you. Well, the good news is the heavier stuff is moved to the coast.
Okay.
So it's going to continue to lighten up. We may see an isolated shower tonight, maybe tomorrow, and then we dry out into the weekend. So if you have weekend plans, you should be in pretty good shape.
Okay, talking of weekend plans, I'm kind of obsessed with going to Aldi and going down the aisle of shame there.
Obsessions is Thursday,
I
so
know,
be
but
sure to get
that's-
your obsessions in.
Oh, yeah, send them to us now. Mine isn't going to be Aldi, but it is right now because
It's every day.
I had to do this because I know Frank. I bought a pickleball setup for my home.
did.
So this weekend, if the weather's good, I got a little net, paddles, little ball. It was all discounted, so I bought it cheap, but I thought of you and I tossed
I'm
it in
so
my
glad
cart.
you did. Let me know when you learn how to keep score.
I'm not going to. I talked to Walt about it. Walt said, oh, cool, so you bought something else to store in your garage?
Exactly.
And I'm like, yeah, that's what I do.
You're
Anyway, so the
funny.
weather's going to be okay this weekend.
It is.
All right, coming up this hour, we've got a lot to talk about on the show. We're going to be talking about gender issues with a counselor and therapist. We are also going to be talking about a winery. Did you know there's a winery in the proper city limits of Houston?
Off I-10.
Well, we're going to learn more about that coming up. But as always, we like to start with some of the fresh headlines. Celeste, what have you got for us?
The Texas Senate approved a bill strictly defining man and woman based on reproductive organs on a 20-11 party line vote. I'm sorry. Ernie and I were discussing this earlier, and this is just, it's really interesting. So the bill has already passed the House and will go now to the governor's desk. The House Bill 229, called the Women's Bill of Rights, was authored by Representative Ellen Toxclair and carried by Senator Mays Middleton. Supporters of the bill say it's about preserving single-sex spaces like bathrooms, locker rooms, and prisons, and opportunities like athletic competitions, which they feel have been threatened by men masquerading as trans women. Democrats argued against this claim, echoing concerns from trans people and their allies who say it's an oversimplification of sex, gender, and the spectrum of human experiences. San Antonio Senator Jose Menendez said it was a form of state-sponsored discrimination. What are your thoughts? Give us a call, 713-440-8870.
Before we get into talking about this, I just want to say that I'm extremely bothered by, and I would almost say offended by the line threatened by men masquerading as trans women, which I think is a short, and that's not Celeste's words, it's the words of the story.
This is the story.
And it just shows the short-sightedness of understanding the complexity of human sexuality and gender. And so words like that do not help in the discussion.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's the point, is that this bill is saying it's not complex. It's very simple. You're either a man or a woman.
And it is simple for some people. Some people, it is very simple. They were born a certain way with certain genitalia. That's who they are. That's the vast majority of people. That doesn't mean that's all people.
Well, as you said before, not everyone is born redheaded. There's a very small percentage, and we run across a redheaded person, we think, oh, well, they have red hair. But about the same percentage is born trans.
Right. Or with some sort of gender
Right?
dysmorphia.
Gender dysmorphia,
yeah.
And is born different, just a little different. I think only 4% of America is left-handed.
Right.
My father was one of them. And it's just there's so many differences, but this one is such a hot button, and I get it. It's about identification as a human being, and that's a lot stronger than just being left-handed.
This may not be the most politically correct way to approach this, but when you talk about left-handedness, what I think of instantly is like in my dad's generation, they would smack their hand with a ruler. You don't write with your left hand to get them to write with their right hand.
Yeah.
And eventually they all go back to writing with their left hand. There's something in human nature that sends you a certain way in how you do. And we can try as a society to guide and change that, but it doesn't.
When I came out to my parents, I used that example with my dad. I said, you're left-handed, and growing up, they gave you a right-handed desk and said, learn to be right-handed, even if you think you're left-handed.
Right.
And I was raised to be a straight kid and get married and have children, and I knew from a very early age I was gay. And I think, Karen Winston and I, Karen, she's a therapist. We were having this discussion last night, and she said, don't we all know back in elementary school that some kids are a little different? That there's the boy that's a little more girlish and a girl that might be a little more boyish. We sense that. It goes all the way back to when we were very young. And then as we grow up, we see maybe more of it. Maybe we are it. Maybe we learn to tolerate it. Maybe we hate it. But it starts so young.
Sorry.
I was just say, but I also think there's a lot of thought. A lot of people, parents, feel like nowadays, if your daughter's a tomboy, it used to be you'd be a tomboy and it had nothing to do with your sexuality. Nowadays, it's like, oh, she's a tomboy, she's gay. Or, she's going to be a lesbian or whatever. And it's like, no, actually, maybe there are some boys that are just a little more effeminate and are totally into women. And, think about that actor. Is it Gene? He was the dancer, and he was very masculine, but he was known in the 1950s for being an actor. I will get his name.
All right.
But my point is that, I think one of my issues is that we want to put sexuality with people's just natural differences.
And I didn't mean to imply that when we're young in elementary school that's a telltale that just because the boy likes to hang out with the girls that he's going to be gay like girls. And it's like
might be girl crazy.
Right. But I'm just saying my point is from a very young age we're all different. We're all different, and as we grow older, we continue to be different. And these differences, I can't imagine what it's like to feel that I've been born in the wrong body, but I certainly know what it likes to be born different than about 95% of the world.
Yeah.
I was talking about Gene Kelly.
Gene Kelly. He was straight.
Michael Baryshnikov.
Yes. I do want to go back. We were talking a little bit ago about, and also, if you have an opinion, a thought on what we were just talking about this new bill that strictly defines men and women, give us a call. Share your thoughts with us, 713-440-8870. I assume some of this will continue on into our first major interview of this hour when we talk more about gender sexuality. But I do want to go back to, we were talking about Donald Trump and the comment about being a dictator on day one. The quote is when Trump was talking to Sean Hannity, Trump said of Hannity, he says, "You're not going to be a dictator, are you?" And I said, no, other than day one. We're closing the border and we're drilling. After that, I'm not a dictator. That was
haven't been drilling much, by the way.
Yeah. But anyway, we had a call also at 713-440-8870 about the Trump versus Harvard situation. Jan is on the line. Jan, what's on your mind?
Yes, I'm very concerned why not only Harvard, but everybody else isn't explaining why DEI is not affirmative action. It seems to me that Trump and GOP weaponizing the idea that many people think DEI is affirmative action, where it is not. DEI is what everybody wants. It's ensuring that all prospective clients or prospects are considered instead of just a select few.
Jen, thank you very much for your comments. Frank?
Yeah, DEI is not affirmative action. And DEI was very popular during the first administration of Trump. It sort of kind of got a roll going. And then all of a sudden, I think Project 2025 has kicked in, and now DEI is persona non grata.
Next call we have at 713-440-8870. Also on this topic, we're going to go to Sam. Sam from Sugarland, what's on your mind?
Yeah, hello, sir. I would like to respectfully submit that Harvard and the fight between Harvard and the Trump administration.
Yes, what's
Harvard
your point?
Is a very long and well-established and popular educational institution. They have got a huge endowment of about $50 billion. They are welcome to do whatever they want as long as they don't take public money. If they take public money, they have to adhere to certain rules, and these rules are fair, saying that, hey, who are the students who are protesting? Who are the students who are blocking other students from going into classes and doing tests? Are these students misusing their visa rights? Visa is a privilege, it's not a right.
Sam,
So
I think
they
though
come
it
on
goes a
student
little bit. Sam, I think goes a little bit further than just that. I think it's wanting to know all foreign students, regardless of what their activities have been on campus, to investigate folks who may not have done anything yet except attended classes and gotten good grades. So, your thoughts on that, Sam?
With due respect, they have not even gone to the first stage of releasing the people who are disciplined, who are making nuisance and preventing people from going into the college. The first step itself they have not taken. None of the institutions have taken that first step.
It sounds like you're saying that if a college takes public money, then they should be subject to what the government wants them to do. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying what the government wants them to do randomly with certain rights. If there's a disruption, imagine there's a student who has gone to college whose parents have pledged their house and sent him to college. Now he's not able to complete his course or he's not able to attend the examinations. How does it feel?
I think what Sam is saying is that sometimes protesting can be more of a disruption to students who actually are going to school to learn, and that instead of it being people's rights, essentially. It is still their right. However, he's also saying it can be disruptive to students who just want to go to class.
Yeah. Sam, thank you for your call. Moving on, 713-440-8870. What are you thinking on this topic? Alvin from the 3rd Ward is on the line. Alvin, what's on your mind?
Okay, guys, how you doing? Great show.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alvin.
So I wanted to make a couple of points. One on Trump being a dictator for a day. Essentially, the fact that he would actually even open that door rhetorically is the threat in and of itself.
Good point.
Secondarily, he is systematically challenging the basic structure of this country in terms of the separation of powers and checks and balances. You know, there used to be an old axiom when I was in school that said that absolute power corrupts absolutely. You never hear that anymore, do you? Because those basic things, those basic tenets were things that we all understood is what made democracy work and kept us free. Secondarily, as it relates to what's happening with Harvard, this is a continuation of the anti-intellectualism that's sweeping this country that is designed to essentially dismantle the intellectual power that we actually have in this democracy to know what's going on and to innovate and to be leaders in this society. Donald Trump is trying to have us rely on him. It is a centralized, almost communist type, central planning type way of thinking. You can call it authoritarian, you can call it communism, you can call it fascism, but one of the things that it is not free democracy.
I'm on Team Alvin.
Now,
Yeah.
my
Alvin?
question for you, Alvin, is why do you think so many people voted for him then?
Oh boy!
Look at who did. Look at who did. And that'll
I'm
be
just
your
saying
answer.
that, I think that whether I agree or disagree, that's not my position. My position is, though, that he was voted into this position.
Yeah, he was.
Right.
Now, if you look at the
and this is
demographics, it was very uneducated people that were the majority.
Alvin, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, and so when Celeste, what you just said right there, I think that is something that we should truly examine when we are talking about these issues. A voting public, first off, no matter what you think, no matter why you think Donald Trump got the electoral votes to make him president, you cannot vote to take down or ignore the Constitution. You don't get a vote to do that. So it doesn't matter what someone might claim was the reason that someone ascended power. You don't actually get to dismantle the separation of powers and due process. And lastly, the reason that people voted for Donald Trump, guys, we haven't said this yet, but I'll go ahead and say it. The reason that people voted for Donald Trump and the reason that connects to this DEI issue is that what's happening is that people are comfortable with white supremacy. The more that we were moving away from white supremacy and a more pluralistic and a more just society that actually functioned, that actually gave people discomfort. And there is a low vibration dynamic in this country that has fallen into the trap of allowing industrialists and billionaires pit us against each other while they run away with the loot, which is actually what's happening in this administration.
Alvin, thank you for that call. I just want to let you know a programming note tomorrow on the show. Beto O'Rourke is going to be here. I just kind of figure you might be interested in that.
Yep.
And
That
we'll probably address some more of this that we have been talking about. Alvin, thank you very much for sharing with us. We were also talking about what's being called the Women's Bill of Rights, which is to identify clearly male and female. And we have Justin on the line with his thought. Justin, what's on your mind?
Well, I'm a transgender man, and I transitioned 4 years ago. And what I see is really going on with this, of course, is the abuse toward trans women.
Justin, I want to pause you for 1 second and just say I think you're on a cell phone and you're kind of breaking up on us. If you can reposition a little bit, we want to hear what you have to say.
Okay, let me try to move around a little bit.
Okay, thanks.
You know if I'm coming in a little better.
There you are. You are better now. Thank you.
Okay. So, I transitioned 40 years ago. I've got a full beard. He knows I'm a little guy, but I do see this as more as going against our trans siblings that are women. And by saying women going and attacking women, it's not an epidemic. That's not happening. And one thing I really don't understand is they're saying trans women are going to be abusers. Trans women are more abused than a regular cis woman. You've got people who are trying not to be public, are trying to just live their lives. They are being attacked. They are being discriminated against. And what they're saying is once they get an opportunity to go into a woman's space, that they are going to become the attacker. That doesn't make sense at all.
Hey, Justin, your comments are going to lead into our next guest. So keep listening, and we'll address this with her in just a moment.
I do think, though, it's one of the issues that a lot of people have, and something that our listeners have, is that trans men or women playing sports in running track, and you just see how they just absolutely dominate when you have. And I think that a lot of people, and I understand, they take hormone supplements and things like that, and that is one of the major arguments. But there are a lot of people, including some of our listeners and viewers, that feel like maybe not in sports.
Yeah. Justin, thank you very much for calling, and
stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Call us back again sometime. 713-440-8870. We're always welcoming your thoughts on the topics of the day, so we have an open discussion here on the show looking at all sides of an issue, and we invite you to be part of this conversation.
Coming up on Hello Houston, we'll talk gender issues. We'll continue the conversation with professional counselor and therapist Dr. Emma Smith. And you can join the conversation at 713-440-8870. This is Hello Houston on News 88.7.
I'm News 88.7 afternoon anchor Gail DeLauder. The most important thing when you sit down to do the news every day is to be accurate. You've got to have the names correct. You've got to have the information correct. You've got to know when something happened, why something happened. So that accuracy is very important. A lot of news agencies, they want to be the first on the air with something, but that can get you into trouble. So you've got to make sure that it's correct and you're going on the best information that you have at the time. But timeliness is important too, but you've got to be accurate with that information.
Tonight on Houston Public Media TV8, the series Bugs That Rule the World concludes with Beetlemania, often regarded as the most important species on the planet. Tonight at 9 on TV8 or stream on the PBS app.
Houston Public Media is licensed to the University of Houston system, governed by the UH Board of Regents. Information about open meetings, dates, times, and locations is online at uhsystem.edu. Support comes from Pearland, Texas, offering new construction with custom options and amenities, mature neighborhoods filled with trees, and urban living. Details at pearlandedc.com/inspiration. Pearland, inspiration lives here. Support for Houston Public Media comes from Certa Pro Painters, offering residential and commercial painting services, from color consultations to full project management. Estimates and more at certapro.com.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now back to Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
All right, our next guest is Dr. Emma Smith, a professional counselor and therapist working out of Nashville, who specializes in anxiety and depression, trauma, PTSD, sex therapy, lots of sex subjects if you go to her website, that's for sure. She works with those who are struggling with shame and anxiety related to their sexual experiences, their identity, or their religious upbringing. She believes clients can explore their deeper self and create connections and greater clarity to achieve their therapeutic goals. She has an online advice column called The Intimate Philosopher. She is with us today via Zoom. Thanks for being on Hello Houston, Emma. Can you hear us?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I don't know if you probably didn't hear our last caller, Justin from Brookshire, who's been trans for 40 years and feels like, as a trans person, that he really is in, or she is really in more of a position to be abused than a cis woman would ever be.
Well, I actually did hear the last caller, and it sounds like Justin is a trans man, and so it sounds like he probably uses he, him pronouns, and so that's what I'll use when I'm describing this. When you look at the data, it is true that trans women in particular, trans people, gender and sexual minorities in general, are more vulnerable to harm. And part of it is because of the way that they are depicted and spoken about in the media and in our popular culture and by some of our thought leaders. And the data tracks that for sure. When it comes to, are they, is Justin more likely to be abused in a bathroom than I am on any given day? Yeah, probably. Because if he has to go into the women's restroom, because that's the law that has been passed in his state, right? I have gone in and out of many women's restrooms, right? Now, that being said, I also have this unique experience where I was sexually assaulted in a public bathroom by a cisgender man. So that means somebody who was assigned male at birth and aligns with their sex assigned at birth as their identity. And I can promise you that he walked in with all of the male privilege and entitlement as any man I have ever met. And it didn't matter that it was a women's bathroom. What mattered is that he had identified me as prey, and he did what predators do.
I'm sorry to hear about that experience.
Well, it has become more meaningful as this debate takes shape, because I do get to use this kind of dark lived experience to say, no, they don't. I mean, going through the pain of hormones and all of the process of becoming your actual self, right?
Right.
When you do that work, I think when you get in touch with the core of who you are, regardless of who you are, I don't tend to believe that lends itself to violence or to predatory behavior.
A lot of your work is focused on shame and anxiety, and we've talked about that in the introduction alone. I'm curious, debates like what's happening in this state right now, talking about all of this publicly about what's happening to trans individuals, for those who now identify in those communities, does that also give shame and anxiety to folks who aren't in this community, this relentless attack on a certain community?
So let me make sure I understand your question. So I think what you're asking me is, when we see all of the attacks on LGBTQ people, for example, or trans people, does that make cis people feel more shame.
Does it give them also shame and anxiety? It's not just the group that's being legislated against.
So brothers and
but
sisters.
Is it more broad?
Yes, absolutely. I think, one of the things that's missing from the conversation is that there are cisgender people who love trans people, right? Who have dear friends and partners and children, right? And parents even. And these are real human beings with robust lives. And so, yes, it hurts when some of my dearest friends, when some of my family, when some of my community is spoken about in the most disparaging terms. Yes, absolutely.
Emma, we received an email question for you from Alex Garza. She wrote, "Hi, Dr. Emma. As a therapist specializing in religious trauma and LGBTQ+, affirming care, how do you guide families, particularly those with faith-based beliefs, in building bridges of acceptance toward their child who has come out? And what role does fostering empathy or forgiveness play in helping them embrace their child's identity?"
I love that question. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to answer that. It is a slower process than people think. And I have all of the compassion and empathy in the world for parents who pour so much into a child and believe that they know who their child is, and then that turns out to not be the case, right? And there's also a deep grieving process and a loss of not only the child that you thought you had and you didn't, but also of all the dreams and possibilities that you had set up for your child, right? And so I think that we have to have empathy for people going through that process so that it makes space for them to fall in love with the child they do actually have, right? So that they can be part of creating new dreams for that person going forward. The problem is also when you have, in Texas, the last time I checked, there was 217 anti-LGBTQ+ legislative bills in Texas for this year. That was up 57 from the year before. And so one of the things that happens with parents is that they become acutely aware of how dangerous the world is. And wouldn't it be just easier to have this one person change than all the people who voted or all the people who keep passing these legislative actions, right? And so sometimes it's easier to turn to the person beside you and say, "Are you sure you have to do this?"
Right.
Maybe it would just be easier
to
right?
hide. It would be easier to not be who you really are.
Right.
Speaking of, I want to turn it a little bit from love to anger because you answered a question of a friend of mine. I've talked about her on this show. That her wife is transgender, in the military, 15 years, served in the Air Force as a transgender. Nothing was wrong with it in the first Trump administration. And now suddenly the second Trump administration, King's X. What we told you back then, no longer true. There are only two genders. And she's very angry. And she wrote you that and said, "What do I do with this anger?"
Yeah. So I love using anger, and I actually use it in my work because I think that when people allow themselves to be angry, that means they value themselves. That means that there's some self-worth in there, that there's something that was injured that is worth protecting and worth fighting and pressing back against, right? And so I think in my article I called it, I think that sometimes anger can be love that's wearing body armor, right?
Yeah.
And so what do we do with that anger? Well, I think we have to start with validation and not suppression and realize that's there for a reason, right? And move through that. And then I think that we also, have to pour our energy into something. There's this idea of, what's the difference between rocket fuel and a bomb, right? And I'm sure there's somebody out there with a chemistry degree who would explain to me why it's very, very different. But the analogy is that, rocket fuel has a directionality to it, right? And then we launch something, and a bomb just explodes and makes a mess, right?
Now,
so
No,
yeah. So I think that we can use our anger that way.
We did get a comment about something that you said just a little while ago, and it says, "Why does it require money and major physical alterations to be your true self? It sounds superficial when framed that way." Can you dig a little deeper in what you meant by that?
Why does it cost money to be your true self?
Yeah, like if you're transitioning
Yeah,
and this person's facing
operations
operations and money and hormones and medical visits, because you said for them to be their true self.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and this was a listener or a viewer wrote in our YouTube comments.
Yeah, I think I almost want to answer that question, but it's almost the wrong question, right? Because I would say, without being glib, capitalism. Right? Like that's why it costs all that money. And as far as major surgeries go, I mean, body dysmorphia, body dysphoria is not limited to transgender people, right? Think about all of the plastic surgeons. I mean, I live in Nashville. Okay, we have plenty of people who are getting plenty of work done, and you know, like me too, right? And so
you look great, by the way.
Thank you. But really, like that is gender affirming care. Right? We do get shamed for, you know, I either look too young or too old. Right. Mm-hmm. I think that oh my gosh, you know, men get shamed for their bodies too. And we don't talk enough about that. When I was working for the Marine Corps, I dealt with more men who had disordered eating practices and body dysmorphia and true hatred for who they happened to be. And sometimes that led them to lead into, you know, some gender affirming care. Was that getting hair restoration? Was that going to the gym 3 times a day and maybe sacrificing relationships? Was that something else? I mean, there's a healthy and unhealthy continuum of that. And I think that's true, not just for trans people, but for all people.
Let me, staying on that note for just a second, I'm curious your view on the concept of it's cultural ideals that lead to or could lead to a lot of the issues that the transgender community feel. And what I'm trying to say there is, if each individual was allowed to represent as they feel they are and just be themselves, and culturally we accepted everyone as each one unique and different, would we see a different understanding of transgender issues, do you think? Do you follow where I'm going with that?
Yeah. I mean, if people were just allowed to be themselves, I think we'd see a lot less of a lot of issues, right? I mean, again, and yes, because the more that you try to squeeze and force people into boxes, right? Mm-hmm. The more it pinches. And so, for example, I was raised in the Northeast, and I'm the youngest of 16 cousins. Right? Most of whom were male. And I grew up hunting and fishing, but also baking and playing softball, but also playing with makeup and doing all of these different things. And nobody was telling me I wasn't allowed to do something because I was a girl and not a boy. Right? And so I had a lot more fluidity in my experience. And I think that when I talk with clients who are the most in pain, a lot of times they do come from the most restrictive binary environments, right? Where there isn't a way to lean into aspects of self without redefining self, because those doors are closed to you. So I don't think that that's every case. Mm-hmm. And I do think that is, I think it's a piece of the puzzle here. For sure. And it's so worth talking about. Thank you for bringing that up.
So Texas has just passed, the Senate and the House, a bill defining what is a man and what is a woman based on their reproductive systems. This is going to the governor's desk. As you know, a lot of people don't understand why they have one reproductive system, but yet they don't feel like that is the one they should have. So what would you tell someone that is facing this situation, that came to you and said, I feel like I should be I'm a man. I feel like I should be a woman. And my state hates that idea. What do you tell that person?
I tell them, I believe you. Right?
It's a real
I tell them I
thing.
believe.
I think that's the bottom line, to say it exists, that transgender exists. And people that want to deny that are the ones that are saying, oh, no, it doesn't exist. You're making it up.
Right. Yeah. So I truly believe that people know who they are at the core. And sometimes that involves a heavy emphasis on gender. And again, sometimes it doesn't. Right. And, oh my gosh, every time I go to give a talk, I have to go back and try to polish up on the phenotypes and the genetics and all of the different things that can go wrong, because it is so wildly complicated. And I understand that when we took, biology freshman year of high school, right? We learned about X and Y chromosomes. And, that was an entry point into understanding genetics, but nobody comes out of 9th grade bio as a geneticist, right? And it is, I think it matters, and it shouldn't be surprising that genetics is more complicated than what we learned in high school. And that's why people have PhDs in it. That's why people have multiple PhDs in it, which one's enough for me. I would never do that to myself again.
So,
right?
So you truly believe it all goes back to genetics. You are born a certain way.
I don't know, because I don't know enough about genetics to say that is the silver bullet. Or is there something just in our, spirit, in addition to the environment that we were raised in addition to our genetics, and in addition to how we show up in our bodies? I'm not sure.
Talking about
but I
the
do believe that people know who they are.
Talking about the combination of elements that can help you identify who you are. Seeing bills passed that are so black and white, that are so A or B, without any regard to the vast variety of differences that are there between A and B in the openness. What do you recommend to people when they try to talk to others about it, to help people understand the wide variety of ways that people can be the true selves?
Well, I think that one of the ways to do that is to start speaking about issues related to gender and sex as not necessarily limited to one specific subset of the population, but that as human beings, we all have our relationship with gender and sex. Right? I wake up in the morning and I am aware and I think about how I'm going to present myself to the world. That is a human experience. That is not a trans experience. That is not a cis only experience. That is a human experience. And so I think that's the angle that I take, is humanizing people, right? Human dignity is so important to me. And I think that one of the things that's happening in the trans debate is actually not about trans people at all. Fear is the cheapest emotion to manufacture, right? It takes very little because it plays on our evolutionary biology of what it's going to take to keep us alive. And if you look throughout history, trans people are often the canary in the coal mine for what's coming and what happens to other people, right? We're seeing that. I think it relates to what's happening with trans people. How much can we tolerate as a society mistreating somebody? Right. I think that you're going to see that with immigrants. How much can the powers that be push us before we say, oh, wait, but they're human beings? Right. And if we start doing that with the most marginalized and the most vulnerable in our society, the powers that be can start chipping away at our humanity. And then who comes after those people? Right. If you look at history, that seems to be a pattern that happens. And we're not unique in that. We're just following it.
Dr. Emma Smith is a professional counselor and therapist. Thanks so much for joining us today on Hello Houston.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Come back.
After the break, we'll talk with an owner of Nice Wine, a local winery. Stay with us. This is News 88.7.
When you hear a story on Houston Public Media, you know it's been carefully reviewed and put together by journalists who take the time to get it right.
Your support helps keep our reporting clear, balanced, and factual.
Because when you have all the facts, you can make better decisions for yourself, your family, and your future.
Protect the news that you rely on. Give now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
Hi, I'm Craig Cohen, the host of Houston Matters. Join me weekday mornings at 9 or at your leisure on your podcast feed for your daily guide to the people, places, issues, and ideas that define Greater Houston. From politics to the economy, energy to the environment, healthcare to education to transportation and beyond. If it matters to Houston, it matters to us. Check us out wherever you get your podcasts or live on the air weekdays at 9 a.m. right here on News 88.7.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Upreach Learning, presenting a summer academic boot camp for grades K through 8th to prepare for next year's math, reading, and writing curriculum. Camps begin June 2nd. Registration info at upreachlearning.org.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from attorney mediator Ron Bankston, providing in-person, video conferencing, and hybrid mediation and arbitration services. More information is available at ronbankston.com.
Support comes from Salambam Houston, presenting Kindred Soul, an exploration of the lives and philosophies of Martin Luther King and Mahatma Gandhi through Indian dance and black music traditions. May 30th at the Miller Theater. More at milleroutdoortheater.com. Support comes from Rice University's Baker Institute, offering a forum for informed, nonpartisan, civic-minded engagement on the most pressing issues facing Texas, the U.S., and the world. More information about becoming a member is at bakerinstitute.org/membership.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now back to Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
All right, Nice Winery is the first and only commercial winemaking vineyard in the Houston city limits, because we're going to find out why would you put a winery in the Houston city limits. Back in March, the family-owned winery won the top all-around winery award at the Houston Rodeo's Uncorked International Wine Competition for the second year in a row. I know they won lots of rodeo awards. Joining us now to tell us more is Ryan Levy, co-owner of Nice Winery. Ryan, welcome to Hello Houston.
Thanks, Frank. Thanks, Ernie. So good to see you guys.
Hello.
Hi.
When we first talk about winning at the rodeo, we did a whole segment on how blind that is. So you didn't win this just because you're in Houston. They have no idea. It's hard to win that.
Yeah, people always ask me, they're like, how did you rig this? How did you win this twice? How did you win so many awards? I'm like, no, it's really a double-blind competition. They have no idea what they are judging when they award the accolades to each one of the wines.
Wow.
So, Ryan, Frank was telling us how the y'all's winery is off I-10. And I was saying, when you're in Napa, you see the rows of the trees, of the grapes. Where are y'all's trees?
If you Google map it, you'll see it.
Really? Is it there?
You really, look, when it's not storming outside like it is today, you need to come over to the winery and see this little slice of heaven in the middle of Houston. So actually, the Houston Chronicle just ran a really cool story. It ran yesterday, actually, about the winery with pictures of the vineyard. And just coming out here, people walk in and they're blown away. They're like, I can't believe that this is in the middle of Houston. There's 300 grapevines, there's rows. Wow. We've got organic vegetable gardens. We've got 100,000 honeybees. We've got a dozen chickens running around. And we're smack dab in the middle of Spring Branch, and people are just blown away by it.
So that makes me wonder, obviously it's working for you folks, and the grapes you're growing and the wine you're making is winning awards. Why haven't we seen more vineyards pop up? Obviously the climate and the environment is right for it. How come you're the only one?
I think it's really difficult, actually. I mean, it's not that the climate is right for it or the soil is right for it. You have to grow the right plant in the right place, and there's a lot of challenges. I mean, back in 2021, we pretty much lost everything in the freeze in Winter Storm Uri that was devastating to our crop. So, but look, we face challenges in Napa. In 2020, we didn't harvest a single grape because of fires and smoke. So pick your poison. Do you want hurricanes and weird freezes, or do you want devastating fires and earthquakes?
You know, Ryan, to that
either
point,
way,
to that point,
lots of challenges, right?
I mean, you grow enough grapes for how many of your wines, and then how many grapes do you import for other wines?
So we grow in Texas. We got 4 Texas vineyards. We grow in California. We have 7 California vineyards. We grow in Washington State. We've got 2 vineyards up in Washington State. And we grow down in Argentina. We've got 2 vineyards down in Argentina. So shockingly, I mean, it's hard to believe this is my 19th year making wine. And in some of these places, we've been growing and making wine for 19 years. So Ian and I get on the plane, we go to our vineyards in the various different places where we make wine, we harvest the grapes, we make the wine there, and then bottle it and bring it back to Houston.
And what about the grapes that you grow here? Do you make the wine?
That's what I want to know.
Yeah, are those?
We make the wine right here. So, I mean, I'm looking, as I look to the left here, the winery is our production room, where we've got huge stainless steel tanks and oak barrels, and that's where we make this wine. This is our Texas Blanc, our white wine from our vineyards right here at Westview Drive and Lumpkin Road.
Can Celeste see that on her tour?
Yes. Yes. Well, I was going to ask you, so what is the process? You've talked about Argentina, you talked about Napa or California. So my question is when somebody is looking to potentially get into this, somebody's like, you know what, I want to grow grapes right here in Houston. I want to do this. What type of process goes into the soil and the difference is versus Argentina or California? Because again, our climate is very different.
Someone who says they want to grow grapes in Houston, send them to get their head checked.
Well, you do it, so should we check your head?
But, yeah, I mean, but people ask why. Why do I grow grapes here, right? And you got to understand, like, I started as a winemaker in Napa Valley, right? I trained 26 years ago in France at Le Cordon Bleu. I am a chef by training. I trained at the same school as Julia Child. After that, moved out to California, trained to become a certified member of the Court of Master Sommeliers, and then trained at UC Davis to become a winemaker. And even though I love making wine in Napa and I love making wine in Argentina, there is something about Houston, and I'll tell you what that something is, but there's something about Houston that told me I had to come home at some point and plant the very first vineyard inside of my hometown and grow grapes here. And that something is actually one of the names of my wines. It's gratitude. And I tell people gratitude is a gift. Right? Mm-hmm. You're given the gift of gratitude, the ability to wake up and be thankful. And 31 years ago, I was only able to go to college. I went to Rice University. I was only able to go to Rice thanks to the generosity of a scholarship I was awarded by the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. And so every day I wake up thinking, how do I pay that amazing gift forward? How do I give back? 35,000 Houstonians raised money so I could go to college.
And now you give them wine.
Well, more than that, right? A place where they can come and walk through a vineyard and touch the vines and see our honeybees and our chickens and eat from our organic vegetable gardens. Every Friday night at our winery, we do 5-course wine-paired dinners with vegetables harvested right from our gardens in the middle of Spring Branch.
I want to go back to your
and
grapes.
My wine club members say, Ryan, this is the version of Houston that we want to support.
Yeah.
This is the Houston that we believe can be.
It's not French laundry, it's Katie laundry.
I want to go back to the grapes, and I want to ask you, can you blindly, when you're tasting wines, tell me where those grapes are from your
That's what
different
I was saying. Yeah.
Not because of the wine, but because of the taste of the grapes.
So one of the parts of testing to become a member of the Court of Master Sommeliers is being to identify ideally the grape varietal and a general region of origin. And for me, I do think there is a particular aromatic note that runs through Texas grapes. Like when I have a wine from Texas, I normally can pull it out of the lineup. And the same for California or Bordeaux, France, or Argentina. However, they've got to be typical, right? It can't be something that's made in a style that's not typical of the region.
Right.
But
So what is the style of our region?
Celeste was asking, what does NICE stand for? And I know it's names, but other than Ian's name, I can't remember whose names.
Yeah, it's an acronym. His sister Natalie's the N, his other sister Cindy's the C. We have a huge marquee here at the winery that says nicer because my name's Ryan. Make nice nicer.
Inclusion is what it's all about. Hey, how's your mom doing, by the way?
She's great. In fact, unfortunately, she doesn't know that we're on today. I'm sure she'd be here with us, and Michelle would be here too.
Yeah.
Because they'd be like, "Oh my God, we got to see Frank."
Well,
But they're great. Thanks for asking.
Thanks for all you do for Houston. We're Hello Houston, and we love featuring Houston businesses and what Houstonians are bringing to this city.
Fantastic. Well, just as a reminder, everything we do is by reservation and by booking. So be sure to go online and book a tasting or experience. Don't just show up.
Okay, what's that website?
It's nicewines.com. NICEWINES.com.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.
And that brings us to the end
of our show. And because he's on Zoom, he did not bring wine for us.
Oh, maybe next time.
He's
got wine.
There we go.
Virtual wine.
That's right. We want to thank you for listening, joining, commenting, calling, and engaging with us today on Hello Houston. We will be back tomorrow with more conversations. This is News 88.7.
Beto is here.
And Beto is in tomorrow in the house. And stay dry. It's raining out there.
Thanks for listening to Hello Houston. Join us every Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. to talk all things Houston. The Hello Houston production team includes Garrett Bowman, William Menjivar, Jen Altide, Todd Holslander, and Jim Kovacic. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Houston Public Media brings to you PBS World. Experience the personal connection behind the headlines with